We're sowing beans today on Pots and Trowels, and that's brought to you with the support of Cobra Garden and King Seeds. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. Well, today I'm going to be sowing beans in the greenhouse. Here we are now, third week in April, and it's the time when we want to be doing lots and lots in the garden. I'm doing them in the greenhouse for the simple reason climbing French beans, dwarf French beans and runner beans are all going to be damaged if they get frosted out in the garden. So it's a little bit too early where we are in Lincolnshire to be planting these directly into the garden. If I was sowing them straight into the garden, I'd probably wait until about the second week in May, so that by the time they push through the soil, we're going to be the end of May, early June, when it's nice and warm and hopefully no frost. But what you can do, if you've got a cold frame or a cold greenhouse, you can start them off under cover to raise strong plants to get them out towards the end of May. And that just gives them a bit of a head start and means you get a slightly earlier crop. So 3 different ones I'm going to be sowing. First one is a runner bean, and this is a variety called Firestorm, which we've grown for a few years. A fairly recent introduction, very reliable. It's self-pollinating, which means that if the weather is cool and damp, the flowers set and you still get a lovely crop of bean pods. And you can see lovely big plump beans there, typical runner beans. They are, feel a bit like Jack and the Beanstalk. So I'm just going to pop those in there, because the other ones we're going to sow are French beans, and there's a climbing one called Cobra which grows up the poles just like a runny bean, but I'm also going to grow one called Stanley, which I've grown for a few years. So this is a really dwarf compact plant, only grows to about a foot tall, but it hangs with lovely pods, and you can see these are quite small little beans, these are, but again really easy to grow, and we can sow them now to put them out in about a month's time. Now when it comes to sowing them under cover to start them off, you can do them in pots. Sometimes I have done it this way. This is a 3.5 inch pot, a 9 centimetre pot, fill it with compost, and I'd put 2 runner beans in there and let them grow, and you'll get lovely strong plants ready to go out. But the way I tend to do it is with these cell trays, which I've used many times. So I do them either in 9s or 12s. I put my dwarf French beans in 12s, my runners in 9, just because it gives them that little bit more room. And doing them now is the perfect time. I know sometimes people want to do it very early in the season, but what we're aiming for is nice, squat, stocky plants to go out in a month's time, not beans that have already started to climb and are 2 feet tall. So very simple to do. I've got the compost. I'm just going to fill cell trays like this. Just give it a tap so it settles, so they're all full. They've all got the same amount of compost in them. And then literally, I'm using my finger as a dibber. I'm just going to make a hole into each one like that. So it really is very fast and very simple. Now, this has got 9 cells in this tray. In my wigwam of hazel sticks, there's only 6 poles, so I only need 6 plants really, but I'm going to plant 9, so I will have a few spares. You normally get a very high germination with beans. Normally everyone grows if they're fresh seed. And I'm just going to put them on the side. You'll see there's a little scar on there where it was attached to the inside of the pod. So I just pop that on its side, but you don't really have to worry too much. So it's just pop them in to the bottom of the hole, deep enough so that we can cover them over with some compost. So that one in there. So just one in like that. And then they can go in there. Now, there's obviously a lot of seeds in there. If you fold that over and store that in a tin in a cool position where they're not going to get hot, don't put it on your greenhouse shelf or they'll cook. You can keep those nice and cool and they'll be fine for next year. So you don't have to get rid of them, or grow loads more and give them to friends and share them. And then just a little bit more compost on there like that. A label which we need to write and pop in there, water them in, and then they can go on the greenhouse bench. No heat at all is needed, and they will be through in about a week to 10 days time. And then we would keep them in good light, reasonably cool. We don't want to get them too leggy and drawn, and they'll make great plants. And I'm going to do exactly the same with the dwarf French beans. The only thing I will do, there's a lot of beans in there. I'm going to sow them in pairs. So I'm going to sow them in 12 cells, but instead of 1 bean per cell, I will put 2. So then I will plant them out as a much bushier plant. But they can all be sown now, and we can look forward to getting strong plants to plant out in a month's time. Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels, and don't forget you can get all the videos that we've done on YouTube, and of course don't forget our weekly podcast, the Pots and Trowels podcast, where we speak to gardening people every week and answer your gardening questions. We'll be back again next week when I'm going to be in the greenhouse planting out some tomatoes, so we'll see you then. Bye.